Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sisters for Harmony. I am one of your co hosts, Dr. Kathleen Walls. I am joined by Ruby Burke, our Vice President of Sisters for Harmony. And unfortunately, my husband will not be able to join us tonight. And I know he is super disappointed because our guest this evening is one of his most favorite people on television who we must watch every time she comes on, and that is Miss Aziza Shuler. How are you doing, Aziza?
Oh, that moves my heart. Thank you so much. That's such an honor to hear you say that.
Hmm.
I mean, I still feel fairly new to Philadelphia,
Hmm.
but the community has been so welcoming.
Yes, yes, and that's a hard thing because we don't
Hmm.
welcome everybody. Let-
Right. I'm still shook. I'm like, what? Like I've been embraced like this out of nowhere. So I have a special place in my heart for the people in Philly.
Yes, we accept that. We love that, and we shake a tambourine to that. All right. Well, Ruby, anything you want to say before I start diving in?
No, I just wanted to say welcome. I've heard so much about you. Edmund raves about you. So it's good to finally meet you.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So Aziz and I had the great opportunity to be in a room together a couple of weeks ago, a virtual room.
Hmm.
And, I was listening to her story and I was just like, okay, this woman has to come on the show. Just an incredible inspiration, motivation, encouragement. And she kept it 100. And that was one of the things that was so important to me. And in any show that I do, I think it's important to educate people, encourage people, inspire people. And Sisters for Harmony is our nonprofit organization, as I mentioned to you in our email, a registered 501c3, which focuses on encouragement, empowerment, inspiration, networking, mentoring. And as I listened to you, I said, "Oh, she's a perfect fit for Sisters in Harmony podcast." So So thank you for joining us. So I want, people get a chance to see you on TV, but I want
Hmm.
that, and they hear other people's stories. And I want people to hear your story.
Mhm.
So can you take some time and just introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah. Is there anything you want me to focus on? Just like,
Just have at it. We just having a conversation and they are privy to hear it. So
okay. Well, my name is Aziza Shuler. I'm a weekend anchor and reporter at CBS News here in Philadelphia. I started my career in Yuma, Arizona, moved to Los Angeles and worked in Los Angeles before coming to Philadelphia. I grew up in Washington, D.C. And yeah, during my childhood, I spent some time in foster care. I was eventually adopted by my maternal grandmother and aunt. And this past September 2023, I
Mhm.
revealed to the public that I deal with alopecia, a condition that causes your hair to fall out. And it's something that I have had since I was about 12 years old.
Mhm.
But I wore wigs up until my 30th birthday.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
It was so much. I remember the episode that they, when they spotlighted you, and we were just, I mean, it was just like, come, look at the TV, look. And I mean, so many questions in that space. For people who did not get a chance to see that episode, or it is available online where you can see. It was about a 5-minute segment that
Yes.
CBS highlighted you. So let's tell them, what number one, what made you choose to take the wig off? How did that even come to pass?
I just got tired of wearing wigs, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest. Like I mentioned, I was wearing wigs since I was 12 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know myself without a wig.
Mm-hmm.
I was held captive almost by this wig.
Yes.
Um, if anyone would come to my house, I would put on my wig. If someone would spend a night or I would spend a night out, I would keep the wig on. No one in my life, honestly, had seen me bald.
Wow.
Except for myself, of course. When I was in
Mm-hmm.
the comfort of my own privacy, I would be
Mm-hmm.
bald. And I felt free that way. And I would think
Mm-hmm.
to myself, when am I going to go out into the world? When am
Yes.
I going to explore this level of liberation?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I didn't really have, in my heart, I didn't have a time or a date or an age of when I would do it or make that revelation.
Yes.
But once I did have that feeling, it felt like it was the right time. And
Yes.
it was a new discovery for me because it was, like I said, it wasn't something that I planned out thoroughly. But I am
Mm-hmm.
the type of person, when I have an idea or I think I want something, I have to do it right away.
Mm-hmm.
So it started out by my boyfriend asking me to take my wig off
Okay.
because he'd known that I had alopecia because I
Mm-hmm.
disclosed that to him
Yes.
when we first started dating, but I didn't show him my
Okay.
bald head.
Yes.
But after about, I would say like a year and a half of us being together, he eventually
Mm-hmm.
just like asked me, when am I going to take my wig off and show him my
Mm-hmm.
bald head?
Now, what was that moment like when he said that? What did you experience inside of yourself?
I honestly felt a sense of relief because I didn't know that I was waiting on him to ask me that for me to
Mm-hmm.
feel comfortable to open up to him. I don't know what I was waiting for
Yes.
because I wouldn't say that I was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm completely comfortable around him, but there was still this sense of resistance
Yeah. Yeah.
inwardly with
Yeah.
me that I felt like I didn't want to reveal that yet. But it was
Mm-hmm.
just like when he finally asked me, not in a way of saying that I had to do it or
Yes.
questioning me about why I didn't do it yet.
Yes.
He just wanted me to feel comfortable around him.
Yeah.
He wanted me to feel like, okay, well, you're spending the night. He lives in New York
Mm-hmm.
and we're long
Okay.
distance to some
Mm-hmm.
degree. But yeah, he's like, you come over, you spend the night, take
Mm-hmm.
a shower,
Mm-hmm.
and I know you're wearing a wig,
Right.
but you have not taken it off in front of me. So what are you hiding? Like, I know you have alopecia,
That's right.
you're bald. I don't know what's the holdup here.
Right. Right. Like, what's the
So
real deal?
yeah, so when he finally just politely as he could just said
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, when are you gonna take your wig off? I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I guess I'm gonna do it now.
He said 5, 4, 3, 2, right now.
Yeah, and
Here we go.
I was a little bit nervous, but I knew I really wanted to do it. Like
Mm-hmm.
as soon as he asked me, I was like, thank God. All right,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
ready.
Yes.
I'd been in a previous relationship before him, and I was with my ex-boyfriend for about 6 years.
Okay.
And I actually was around him bald a lot.
Okay.
And I don't know what the difference was. I think because of that relationship, I had a sense of like insecurity, not insecurity. It was weird because I think that past relationship, I probably stayed too long because I felt so comfortable. I was thinking like, oh, now I have to reveal this to someone else
Mm-hmm.
again, or
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Mm-hmm.
go through that phase again of feeling like, what is it, like an unhealthy attachment to somebody because they knew something so personal
Yep.
about me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't new to me to reveal to a person I'm dating my bald head. It's
Yes.
just that I had only done it once before, and I
Yep.
knew that I stayed too long in that relationship because of so many personal things that I disclosed to that person.
Got you. That is so, I'm so glad that you're saying this. Obviously, as a clinical psychologist, I deal with this with clients on a lot of different levels, whether it's sexually transmitted disease, whether it's a trauma background, something that people hold close to chest that they have finally had enough courage to share with someone, and then they stay stuck in the
Yes.
space, right? That they know that they're not even growing anymore in the space. And so it's like, all right, here's this leap of faith, here's this leap of courage, here's this opportunity. I know a lot of times people say to step out of their comfort zone, but I really see it as expanding your comfort zone.
Right.
Because the more you get used to pushing outward, the more your zone expands.
And that's what I feel like I was working on as I'm becoming older and wiser,
Mm-hmm.
just revealing more about myself and opening up my comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
letting down some of my guard that I would have up.
Mm-hmm.
And that started for me with opening up about my childhood and the trauma that I faced as a
Mm-hmm.
child or suffered as a child.
Yeah.
And once again, it started by opening up to the person I was in a relationship with. And he helped me kind of reconnect with my family in a way of like having someone I felt safe around
Mm-hmm.
to be by my side as I take that step of discovering my past.
I love it.
And so it started there, and then it started with the alopecia. And then once we broke up, it wasn't that I was I didn't have a sense of like an unhealthy, I don't know how to explain it. I wasn't grieving the breakup. I was
Right.
more so like, okay, our time was over,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
was excited to move on and find
Yeah.
someone new and find the person that was right for me.
Mm-hmm.
But it helped me to open up a lot to the world
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
by being with someone who I felt safe with, and they showed me like, okay, it's okay to be yourself. It's all
That's
okay
right.
to be authentic, but that didn't mean that I had to stay with that person because they taught me that.
Right. Right.
Right.
That's a big all right, y'all. So anybody who ever listens to any of my shows, y'all know you need a pen and paper to write things down because you come into class and you gonna catch some gems and she's already teaching you. Okay. So you make sure you capture that.
I'm just teaching through experience, as
Come
most of
on.
us women do, because you
Yes.
have women who are wiser and more mature, and they would tell you things, but then you just have to go through it on your
Yes.
own
Yeah.
to learn it and really understand.
True.
Ruby, anything you want to say to that? Because I know I got a whole story for that one.
No, you know what, and that's true because I remember being told certain things, but I had to experience it on my own.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't experience, I wouldn't be the person I am now. But whew, if I had listened,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have to go through it. So
Right.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you are a role model.
Mm-hmm.
You are an inspiration
Mm-hmm.
to a lot of people, young girls, young women, older women. If you could say one thing to them, what would you say?
Hmm. It's okay not to be perfect. You don't have to try to be perfect, just be who you are, because I think most of my life I spent chasing perfection and this idea of perfection that I had for myself. And I thought that I wouldn't be accepted in the world professionally, personally, in different relationships with people in general, not just intimate relationships, but friendships and
Mm-hmm.
um, all sorts of relationships with people. I thought I wouldn't be accepted if I wasn't perfect or the right
Mm-hmm.
way of being.
Mm-hmm.
And that really put a wall up. Like it was hard for me to really connect with people because I wasn't being my authentic self. And I just
Mm-hmm.
thought maybe I'm like, oh, maybe I'm just an introvert. Maybe I'm just shy. Maybe I'm just the type of person where I need to be by myself, or I don't really need these type of relationships to make me feel whole. So
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of self-evaluation and introspective work. And I realized like I do need those connections and I do crave that sense of
Mhm.
intimacy with people,
Yeah.
but I wasn't getting it and I wasn't allowing myself to open up to it because I
Mm-hmm.
was so afraid of revealing my scars, revealing what made me different, revealing the things that I've gone through. And those things actually make you relatable rather than just trying to be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's
Right.
so interesting, right? Because we have these images of perfection in our mind that we think other people are having.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so we're trying to live up to that with the assumption that that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And
Well, we're
so
projecting our own perception.
100%.
And once you realize that, I
Yes.
guess it's that awareness first, and
Mm-hmm.
then breaking out of a habit of doing that,
Yep.
then you can really truly experience who you are. Experience, because I used to think I didn't have any personality. I was like, well, because in my head, what personality was like people who are super outspoken and loud and like boisterous and funny and like, just a certain idea that I had of
Mm-hmm.
personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like always thinking like, okay, maybe I just don't have a personality.
Okay.
But it was just me not opening up.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I began to open up, people started becoming attracted to me for who I am, not just for the outward appearance. Because people can be attracted to the way you look, but that don't keep people around.
That's
that
right.
don't make people remember you. That doesn't give people a feeling of wanting to know more about you or wanting to invest in you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Over on the Instagram side of life, they're saying, OMG, yes. So that,
yeah,
very much so. And just even that, right, as you're saying, the more authentic you are and aware of yourself, the more relatable you become.
Yeah.
Because there's an opportunity to connect with that authenticity. And it sounds like your boyfriend was encouraging you to fully embrace your authenticity with him, but mainly with yourself.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. All right. So now this whole idea, there's so many different ways to go with you, Aziza. I'm so thankful you're here. You had this moment on your 30th birthday.
Yes.
You said? And what I often tell a lot of people, it's deep in the research, but that adolescence doesn't really end until 29 or 30.
Mm-hmm.
And I just call your 20s your teenager with adult privileges. So you're just
just doing things because you can.
Exactly. Right. And trying to figure it out. So here, and you used this word earlier that I love, you liberated yourself.
Yeah.
And what happened after that moment of liberation?
I feel like just a whole new world of possibilities and opportunities opened to me. One, I connected with hundreds, maybe even thousands of people who related to my story on different levels, whether there were women who were experiencing hair loss or alopecia, men experiencing the same thing, children, people who have had traumatic childhoods, have dealt with foster care, have dealt with drug addiction in their family, have dealt with sexual abuse. All of those things, people literally opened up to me and were vulnerable and transparent about these things that can seem taboo or embarrassing or insecurities. People were opening up to me about it. And it helped me to realize that I wasn't alone, because for a long time I thought I was the one that was different and everyone else was normal. And I just was trying to be normal. Then I realized, okay, I am normal, and it's okay to have things about you that are unique.
Yes.
And you're really not that unique. Like, we all like to say we're different, we're unique, and, we try to embrace that. But I think revealing my story, but also being a journalist in general, I realized how much in common that we all have with each other.
Yes.
There's not that many different stories, because I do stories every day, and a lot of stories are the same. So, and that's a good thing in a way, because it shows you that as humans, we all have similar experiences to some degree.
Yes. You find that thread. So let's talk about this journalism piece. So here, you didn't see yourself as outspoken or gregarious, but yet you end up in journalism.
Right.
So how did that come to pass, and how did you embrace it?
I know that's so funny, because people who know me from a child or middle school and high school, they are still blown away that I'm on TV and reporting. But I always knew what I wanted to be. I just wasn't open, and I didn't speak about it often as a kid. But in my heart and in my journal, I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yes.
My father told me at a young age that I was going to be a journalist, and I was going to tell the stories of people like us, people who come from unfortunate circumstances or who were dealt a bad hand in life. And that always stuck with me. So I would actively pay attention to the news and listen to the radio and try to copy off of them in a way. Like I had my own little radio show on. So when I was a kid, we used to have the desktop computers.
Yes.
And in my house, we didn't have internet. So all I had on the computer was Minesweeper and card games. We had an encyclopedia disc, and the other thing was just the voice recorder.
Yes.
And I would use the voice recorder to tape my own radio show in the comfort of my own home with my sister and brother. So like that's when I felt comfortable to open up when I was with my siblings. Like I would open up and show my full personality, and they knew exactly what I wanted to do.
Yes.
But yeah, like just growing up in DC, being able to see the representation of Black news anchors and reporters and journalists and just professional women who were an inspiration and role models for me, women who came from all walks of life. But I just got to see it at a young age. And once I moved out of DC, I went to UCLA, moved to California. And when I was there, I would say, like, I would just hear so many young Black women or Black people in general say they didn't have the representation or they didn't see people in the positions where they wanted to be.
Yes.
And they felt like they were blazing a new trail on their own. And I never felt that way. I always saw people doing exactly what I wanted to be. So I knew it wasn't hard. I was like, okay, I just have to do this path.
Yes.
And that's what got me through, is knowing that there was a formula to the end goal. So people always kind of are blown away or just shocked or ask me, like, how did you get through? How did you get through going through foster care or dealing with parents who suffered from addiction and not having the most traditional upbringing? How did you get through that? And I'm like, to me, there was no other option, because I knew exactly how to get to where I wanted to be. I knew I had to go to college. I knew I had to get internships. I knew also, this is kind of a flawed view on it, but I knew I had to appear a certain way in order to become succcessful. And that included, looking a certain way physically, wearing wigs, if you will, a certain way, my makeup a certain way, just so I felt I presented myself as confident and I could, make a way for myself and follow the path of people I saw ahead of me.
It's so important. Go ahead, Ruby. You look like you're getting ready to ask something.
No. I was just thinking how amazing that is, especially, you're a mentor. And I know that, you have young people who look up to you, and your story is just amazing.
Thank you. And I just think it's now that I am where I am, not just like success wise, but just personally, I've come to a place where I've accepted all of who I am and accepted my journey. I think it's important to share it so that young people can see representation, that you don't have to be perfect and you can come from an imperfect past to still be successful. And that's what I didn't have. I just saw people didn't share, back, at least I'm sure when I was a kid, people didn't share their stories as much. You just saw the end result. And that's why I kind of had that perception that, okay, I have to be perfect. I have to meet these certain standards in order to achieve it. So although I had that formula, if you will, I still had a flawed mindset of thinking, okay, I can only look this way in order to get to where I want to be. And I want to show the next generation that, no, just because you are a little less fortunate or you're in a certain circumstance, it's okay to still be transparent about that and accept it and allow that to be a part of your story.
It's so important because, we were saying a little bit earlier that I remember when I was 22, there was a certain mindset that I had. And then when I turned 32, my mindset was completely different. And even though I was open to listening to people, you couldn't have told me things at 22. I just wasn't there intellectually, but I also, to your point, didn't have certain people telling me things. So now you, such as yourself, we of course have all of this social media where people are sharing their stories, and then we have to use discernment on whose story do we listen to.
Right.
But we do have that awareness now that things just don't happen overnight. There's a buildup, there's a process. Go ahead, Aziza.
No, yeah, that's very important because like you just said, having that discernment and also just we have so much access to people's story, or people have platforms to share their stories in
Mm-hmm.
whatever way they may like, and they
Yes.
may leave out parts of their story because they're embarrassed, or they are
Mm-hmm.
ashamed, or they don't want that those chapters included.
Yes.
So then it paints a picture that, oh, it just happened overnight for them.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I thought a lot of the time when I would, listen to people or read up on certain professionals' stories. And I'm like, oh, well, they just went to college and then they got this job right after. And I just assumed that. And I thought, okay, that's how it would happen for me. But it did not happen for me that way.
Right. Right. So
Right.
now let's take a side moment and teach people a little bit about journalism. What does it even mean to be a journalist? What does it mean to be an anchor person? And excuse me, and an Emmy award winning one at that. Congratulations, madam.
Thank
We must give you some tambourine love. So what does that even mean?
Well, there are different sectors of the journalism industry. I'm a part of broadcast journalism, which means I'm on television. And then even more nuanced is local news. So in local news, it means telling the stories that matter and impact your community, a
Mm-hmm.
certain demographic, which in Philadelphia, it includes the city of Philadelphia, the suburbs of like Montgomery County, Delaware County, actually Delaware as well, and New
Mm-hmm.
Jersey, South Jersey. So telling the stories within those in that region.
Okay.
Of course, news, breaking news, crime, sports, weather,
Mm-hmm.
and then feature stories, which are profile pieces on the people who live in the area where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what local news is. And the difference between being a reporter and an anchor is a reporter is actually in the field and you write your own stories and you report live or on tape, versus an anchor is in the studio at the desk and they carry the show. So they're the
Uh-huh.
face of the show. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a different level of weight and respect and skill that comes with it. And each role has a different skill set and role in the
Mm-hmm.
newsroom, if you will. One
Mm-hmm.
isn't better than the other, but they're just different.
Yeah, yeah. So you starting out to where you are now, what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I started out. So when I graduated college, I graduated in 2015 from St. John's University in New York City. I had that mindset of thinking things would happen overnight. So I moved to Los Angeles. I moved back to LA because I went to UCLA originally for 2
Okay.
years and
Mm-hmm.
transferred to St. John's, graduated from
Mm-hmm.
St. John's, moved back to LA because I had this idea, okay, if I just move to LA, I'll meet the right person and I'll get a job in the number 2 market in the country. So the way
Mm-hmm.
the news markets are made up, there are about 200 markets in this country, and they are ranked based on viewership, and viewership is determined by the size of the community. So to put things into perspective, Philadelphia is the number 4 market in the country because it has the 4th largest viewing population in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So Los Angeles is number 2, New York City is number 1.
Okay.
I was already in New York City when I graduated, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm gonna make it in New York just yet because I didn't even get it. I don't think I got like an internship or anything. And I was like, well, let me just move back to LA. I really liked living there. I missed it. And I was like, you know what? I can start off as a producer or something. I don't know. I'll just apply to a bunch of jobs. I didn't even have a reel. So typically when you're
Wow.
trying to get a job on air, you need a reel that just gives people a sample of what you're like on camera.
Yes.
I didn't have any of that. I was just delusional.
Wow. You were fresh.
I
You
know.
were
Yeah. I was delusional. I just moved back to LA and was just applying to jobs all the time with I didn't meet the qualifications at all.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But, I was trusting God. I was like, you know what? God doesn't call the qualified. He calls the people that. So, I just had that mindset. I don't know where it came from, but no, things did not work out that way. I was in LA for several years. I don't even know how many years, but I was
Mm-hmm.
there. I worked several jobs. I was in a relationship. And for the most part, though, I was working in a restaurant in Beverly Hills as a hostess, making pretty good money. So I started getting comfortable. All of my friends were actors and actresses, so I would take acting classes and hosting classes just to do something. Until time started ticking, and I'm like, okay, I've been here for like 2 or 3 years. What am I doing? Why haven't I gotten a job? And I knew I still wanted to be a journalist, but my stubborn mindset was telling me, you don't want to go to a small market, which is the traditional route when you're a journalist, a local news reporter. You start off at the bottom, and the market's like from 100 to 200 or something like that, meaning moving to a small town in the middle of nowhere, which is what technically you should do, because you don't know anything. No one's, the community is small, so not that many people are watching. You can make mistakes and no one will care. And usually those little towns are used to people not being good on air, they're used to amateurs. Versus in Philly, if you all saw someone on air that would seem like an amateur, you all would be like, what the heck? Where did they come from? Why are they on our TV?
Yes.
So I was like very opposed to that. But one day I was at work, and an anchor woman or a sportscaster who worked for ESPN at the time, she came in, and I only knew her because my father was a huge fan of hers, and he would tell me to model myself after her. He would always be like, pattern yourself after women who are classy, who are articulate, and he always say, have a little bit of sex appeal. So that's what she was or is. And when she walked in, I was like, my father would be pissed off at me if I didn't say anything, because like I mentioned, I'm very shy and reserved. So I was like, I don't know if I should say anything, but if I missed this opportunity, he wouldn't forgive me. So I introduced myself to her and told her I was an aspiring journalist, and immediately she was like, okay, well, come shadow me at ESPN in downtown LA. You can come to the studio. And we'll see where it goes from there, just so you can have some type of experience to see what it's like. And I thought she was just like saying that because people say stuff like that all the time. And I was just like, okay. Well, I actually followed up with her, and she didn't think I was going to follow up because the same reason, like young girls come up to her all the time and are like, I want to do this, and then they never follow up. So I actually followed up right away. I was like, hey, when can I come? And she was like, all right, be here at 5 a.m. And I showed up at like 4:45. Come on. And she was like, she wasn't even there yet, and she just was impressed by my sense of awareness, one, but just being on time, being prompt, being willing, and just ready to do whatever to some degree. And I was like, yeah, like, do you need me to write your script? What do you need me to do? Do you need me to go get you some coffee? I was just there to shadow, but I was open to any type of opportunity or any little nugget of her time that she would give me. And from there, I ended up becoming her personal assistant and an apprentice at ESPN, and like just producing, writing scripts, and doing whatever around the studio just to gather some experience. And I did that for about 1.5 to 2 years. And during that time, I just kept telling her, like, I want to be on air. I don't know where to start. How can I get a reel together? And she just encouraged me to use the resources that I had through her to put a reel together. So whether that was like getting access to NBA G League games or going to the Summer League in Las Vegas, things like that, I would do on my own and just shoot it and have something to put together to send out around the country. And when it was my time and when I felt ready, I sent out my reel, my YouTube link to directors all across the country, probably to like 50 or 70 places that I didn't really want to go. And I got a few callbacks. One was in Burlington, Vermont. Another was in Minnesota somewhere. And then I literally looked at the map and I saw Arizona wasn't that far from California. This sounds bad. I had no sense of like spatial awareness of where Arizona was. I never thought about this place in my life. I was in California, but I never thought about Arizona. And I just looked at the map and I'm like, Arizona's right there. If I go there, I wouldn't have to pay a lot of money to move across the country or something like that. So I just like looked at the map and looked up some small towns in Arizona, and I found Yuma And they got right back to me, and the news director was like, "Oh yeah, do you want to come down and check it out?" And I was like, "Yeah." So I drove down 4 hours from LA, which wasn't bad to me,
Yeah.
and I accepted the job for $25,000. Yeah,
Wow.
and I was
Wow.
already making a good amount of money, still working in the restaurant and a personal assistant. So I was just
Hmm.
like, "Do I really want to do this?" But I did, because I was ready to get the experience, one,
Yes.
but I knew that it wouldn't take long for me. Once I
Yeah.
got the access to have a job on air,
Hmm.
I knew what I had to do to get better.
Hmm.
And that's what I did. I just went to Yuma, Arizona, had the time
Mm.
of my life. I never would have expected to live somewhere like that, in the middle of
Yes.
the desert, being the only one of the few Black people in the community on
Hmm.
the border of
Hmm.
Mexico, where majority of the population was either like white Republicans or
Hmm.
Mexicans.
Hmm.
And I learned so much about myself and about society. Learned about politics. I learned about agriculture. I learned about immigration, things that were not on my radar living in
Yes.
LA.
Yes. That is it's amazing, and there's comments going on in the chat room that
Oh,
are
I didn't even
saying,
see the
"I
comment.
love it." We have a young man by the name of Nasir Leach, and please just give a shout out to Nasir.
Hi,
So,
Nasir.
all right, I know he is smiling from ear to ear right now. So I had the opportunity to meet him at an event a few months ago, and then I actually ran into him at an event this past weekend. And Nasir is, and I'll read what he wrote. He said, "I'm a male host located in Pennsylvania, born and raised in the city of Chester, and I'm a broadcast and journalism major at Widener University." So he is thrilled to hear your story, and he wanted to know if you could give a young Black man pursuing a long career as a journalist at large, covering a variety of events. So, what type of advice would you recommend for him?
One, if you were just tuned in, same advice that my father gave to me: pattern yourself after people who look like you. So in my case, it was a Black woman, but in your case, Black men. There are many Black men in this industry.
Hmm.
Um,
You work with one of the best.
I was going to say Yuki Washington.
Hmm.
He's one of the best. Or even I work with sports anchor Don Bell. He's a great example.
Hmm.
Super talented and very sharp.
Yeah.
Insightful, and he's able to banter back and forth. So
Hmm.
you have to do some research and find people who you actually like to watch,
Hmm.
and pattern yourself after them, but two, reach out to them, because
Yep.
people, as you heard from my story, people are willing to help you and mentor you because they too have been in your position before.
Yes.
So reach out to them and find mentors who are doing what you want to do. And then, as you also heard in my story, put together a reel. So start going out to events that you want to cover. Um, Usually, organizations or event hosts, they're open to people coming to cover their event, whether
Hmm.
you have a publication or not. Just tell them that you have a blog, you have a website, you have an Instagram, whatever that
Hmm.
may be. Let them know you're working on putting together a portfolio and you would love to cover their event. And that gives you some level of experience. And then eventually you'll get credibility, because there are lots of independent journalists or influencers who have a huge following, and people are open to them covering events or news stories or whatever it may be, because they have credibility at that point. Once you have
Hmm.
people watching and subscribe to you, you have a level of credibility.
Hmm. So now, one of the things that I've heard in your story, and I know it even for myself. So I was in the sixth grade when I decided I wanted to be a psychologist,
Mm-hmm.
and it just locked in. I just felt like everything in my body, my mind, and my spirit was like, "That's it. Like that's what we're gonna do." And throughout my life's journey, there were times where I did think about being an attorney. I did think about being an MD, but I always knew I was going to be a psychologist no matter what. When your father gave you that piece of advice, do you remember feeling some sort of sensation inside of you like, yes, that's it?
I won't lie to you. I don't remember all of that. I have the worst memory, but
Okay.
no, I don't remember all of that. But what I do remember is because, so as I mentioned, I was in foster care. My parents struggled with drug addiction. So I didn't
Mhm.
grow up with my parents in the same household.
Mhm.
Um, I just remember the few times they were allowed visitation. My father
Okay.
would always say that to me. Like
Okay.
I probably only had a visitation or a moment to have like a face-to-face conversation with my
Mhm.
parents a handful of times that I can remember when I was
Mhm.
a child
Mhm.
because of the circumstances, not
Yeah.
because we didn't want to, but because legally, when
Yep.
you're in foster care or you're adopted, it's up to your guardian
Your legal
to,
guardian.
make those decisions. And
Mhm.
unfortunately, I didn't have that opportunity. But
Mhm.
yeah, when my father did have those moments with me, he would always tell me I was going to be a journalist. So I
Mhm.
remember that vividly. And I remember him always saying, uh, remember that you are a young, intelligent, beautiful Black woman.
Mm.
And that just stuck with me. As I told you throughout my story, I
Yes.
always just would attract to those type of people,
Yes.
independent, beautiful Black women.
Mhm.
And but I think around the time when my father would tell me I would be a journalist, I admired Tyra Banks. Although she's not a journalist, she had a talk show.
Yes.
And everything that Tyra did, I wanted to be like her. So when he first said that to me, I just was like, Tyra Banks. It's something right. I'm like, I
Yes.
want to be like Tyra Banks because she just was this multifaceted, beautiful
Mhm.
woman. She was able to just sit down and talk. I know most people bring up Oprah Winfrey, but
Yours was Tyra.
Tyra Banks for me for some
Come
reason.
on.
Like I was young and I just would watch her show, and she had all the celebrities, or she had everyday women who she would make
Mhm.
them feel so beautiful and confident. And that's what I
Yes.
loved about her. She had a
Yes.
way that she connected with her audience and her viewers,
Mhm.
and she made them feel a certain type of way. And I knew I wanted to have that same impact on making
Mhm.
people feel accepted and making them feel confident.
Yes.
Um, it's so interesting that now that my journey has come full circle, I'm able to do that through my story, but I didn't know how I was going to do it. And
Yes.
now I see how.
Yes. And so it's also, I want to put up here. So Nasir said, "Oh, wow, I love Yuki and Donzel." And he said, "I just connected with them not too long ago."
Awesome.
Yes. Yes. So you have some modeling in your background. So Tyra inspired you in multiple ways.
Yeah. Well, growing up in DC, it's just something that we do. Like, it's just something that I know in Philly, y'all have things that y'all do. In
Yes.
DC, we love being fly and fabulous. Like, that's
Hmm.
just, as my father says, in our DNA. We
Yes.
love those things. So, modeling, it's not like your mainstream modeling in DC. It's like an extracurricular activity that they have in all high schools.
Okay.
You have runway shows, or when I was growing up, we
Wow.
would have the hair shows and things like that you would have at a
Yeah.
convention center.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that was always a thing that I was into, and I just did as an extracurricular, not thinking to pursue it as a career, but it was something that was a safe space and was a place where I could let go and have fun and be amongst people who were
Hmm.
like-minded, and we just did it carefree.
Hmm. Now I am so curious, and Ruby, I can ask questions all day long. You have any
Oh,
questions? I don't want to. I don't want to leave you out. Go ahead.
go ahead. You're good.
Okay.
I'm just
So
amazed. I'm just listening to her.
Oh,
with the news, do you pick out your outfits? Do they pick out your outfits? How
no,
does
I
that
pick out my
work?
own outfit. So in local news, there's no wardrobe budget. There's no I would say there's no hair and makeup artists, but when I worked in LA, there were hair and makeup artists who would do your
Hmm.
hair and makeup when you're in studio, but not if you're reporting in the field.
Okay.
But yeah, you style yourself, you pay for your own wardrobe, all of those things.
Hmm. Okay. So,
But once you get to the network level, like,
ah,
the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell, like
yes.
that's when you have a stylist and makeup and all of that.
Okay. And so, speaking of stylists, so do you have your own stylist yourself? And
No.
you do
I
it all yourself?
do it all myself.
That's that's that DC in you
Yeah.
coming out. Okay. So if we play some go-go, we know it's in the blood. It's just in you.
Yeah. Well, that's a different story. I grew up very sheltered, so I never really listened to go-go growing up. I grew up in a very
Okay.
Christian household, so my
Oh,
grandmother didn't let me do anything.
you,
Yeah. Okay.
But I know what it is, and
yeah.
I've heard it before. It just wasn't a part of like my upbringing.
Got you. Got you. All right. So you mentioned Nora O'Donnell and, even shows, let's say like Good Morning America. Any interest in going those types of routes?
Yes, of course. That's been a goal of mine since the start of my career. My goal was
Mhm.
always to get to New York City. One, it's the number one market in the country.
Mhm.
So it's the highest level that you can be a journalist
Yes.
to some degree, because of course there are amazing journalists all around this country who are in
Mhm.
different cities, and that doesn't dictate your talent.
Yes.
However, that was always my goal, was to get to New
Gotcha.
York and possibly go network and be nationally syndicated.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, that's still a goal of mine, but I'm also rethinking myself as a brand. Like, I don't want to just be a journalist. I
Mhm.
know for many of us reporters and anchors, we kind of feel like we have to be in this box. You have to look a
Mhm.
certain way. You have to only show who you are and your job as a whole, like as a representation of you.
Yes.
But times are changing, especially with social media, and
Yep.
just the community in general craves authenticity, and they
Mhm.
crave knowing really who you are and not just who you're presenting as on television.
Right.
So I want to find ways to really be an all-encompassing brand, whether that's writing
Mhm.
a book or I don't know, just spreading my wings and trying other things.
Mhm.
I
Now
don't know
you
what yet, but
got you.
that's what I'm trying to discover.
Got it. Got it. And I'm so glad you mentioned the book piece because I was coming there next. You have so obviously so many stories. And I remember someone said to me before I wrote my first book, they said, "When will you realize that there's an audience just for you?"
Hmm.
And that statement stayed with me for probably 3 years before I wrote a book. I had no intentions to write. After my dissertation, I had no intentions to write a book. And then they made that comment, and it just kept ringing. It never went to the back of my mind, it just kept staying right there. And my mind was like, Michael Jackson, Madonna, Beyonce, Celine Dion, they all have an audience just for them,
Hmm.
right? And sometimes you get people who cross and they go to all. But I was like, okay, so you have multiple intersections of audiences around various stories of your life.
Yeah.
So what are you thinking as far as being an author? Is that something on the horizon?
Well, yeah, it's definitely something that's always been on my
Mm-hmm.
mind and my heart, because my parents have always told me, like, God didn't give us as a family this story for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And there are so many other people who can relate to this. And like my parents, they are the most, one, they've been together for like 50 plus years, and they've gone through ups and downs together and are still
Mm-hmm.
together and in love and believe
Oh,
that they're
wow.
so, yes. So they just have this level of like confidence in themselves and in our family, and they believe that, we went through all that we went through for a reason, so there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing to be ashamed of,
Mm-hmm.
for one. And for two, it's like, after going through all of that and still coming out successful,
Yes.
that's a real inspiration.
Yes.
And my parents are always like, you see all these other people who have reality shows and have books and are make movies, and they don't even have a real story to tell. He's like, you have a story to tell, and you need to put it out there, because there's so many people who will be moved and inspired, motivated, or just feel seen and
Yes.
heard by me sharing my family story.
Yes.
And
Yes.
it's just layers to it. So I think in the last year or so, I've been thinking a lot about writing a book. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
intimidating to just
Mm-hmm.
think about the process and the time
Mm-hmm.
it'll take, but narrowing down what I want to include, because I think the common theme for me is just generational curses and breaking generational curses that go
Mm-hmm.
back
Right.
to like even my grandparents,
Yes.
where some of the things that my grandparents went through, my parents dealt with as well,
Mm-hmm.
and my siblings have dealt with, and I haven't been the one to deal with certain things. And I'm like, am I the one that's breaking the generational
Yep.
curse in my
Yep.
family, for my
Yep.
lineage?
Yep. Yep. All right. See, now we're getting ready to go two different directions. So first, your spirituality. How has that been in your life? How has it impacted your life, and how do you utilize it now?
Well, I'm grateful that I was raised a Christian
Hmm.
and raised in a very religious household. And of course, as a child, it didn't resonate with me because I just thought, oh, my grandmother's crazy and she's strict and she just, she doesn't love me because she's so like she was very strict Christian
Hmm.
woman who's from North Carolina, I believe, grew up in the South, but moved to DC eventually. So I didn't really grow up in a household where it was very loving to
Hmm.
some degree, but church was always a constant. I always went to church. We always were told to read the Bible. And one of the more familial moments of my childhood was always Bible study with my grandmother.
Hmm.
So that's always stuck with me. Even though, like, I joke as a kid, I used to tell myself, once I become an adult, I'm not going to church no more. I would say that to myself. But once I actually became an adult, I realized that faith was the only thing that carried me through.
Hmm.
And it was the reason why I never really worried about things. I never had, like, there's a Bible verse, Philippians, I think it's like 4:16 or something like that, where
Hmm.
it's like, don't be anxious about anything.
Yep.
And for the most part, I never get too anxious about things because I always pray first and I have a deep sense of faith and a
Yes.
relationship with God. So I know that things have always worked out for me, whether
Yes.
they worked out immediately or they took years and years and years.
Hmm.
Whenever I hit that moment when something works out, I always look back and be like, dang, I remember when I was in this position. I remember when I was
Mhm.
a child and I was miserable and I was going through all of this traumatic stuff and I would pray. Well, at the moment, I didn't know I was praying. I thought I
Yes.
was manifesting
Uh-huh.
or, just like fantasizing
Yeah.
as a
Yeah.
child, but
Yeah.
I was actually praying.
That's
I
right.
was praying that I would get out of those circumstances. And
Hmm.
once I was on the other side, I was like, wow, miracles do come true.
Hmm. Hmm.
God works.
Yes.
And that's the only thing that I can attribute to why I overcame so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm also hearing, I remember a pastor friend of mine, Pastor McCarter, he would say to me, you have the gift of knowing.
Hmm.
And there were just things that I knew in my life. It was just matter of fact. There were no questions. You couldn't persuade me. It was not a belief that could be shifted in any way. It was just, this is what it's going to be, what it's going to be. And,
Right.
and that's it. So let me see. Dr. Wade here. So this is Dr. Louise Wade. She's one of the African American veterinarians in the Philadelphia area. She says, regarding being intimidated by the thought process of writing a book, I would offer to you your book is already written. It just isn't on the pages yet.
I agree. I agree. I think more so being intimidated, I think it's just about time. And
Hmm.
because my job is so time demanding,
Yes.
by the time I'm done with work, I'm always exhausted. And I'm just like, I need to get in a space in my life where I can actually focus on it. But I know there's never the right time to focus on something. You just have to
Hmm.
start it.
You just started. And
Yeah.
so I have written now, what am I at? 6, 7 books.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Thank you. And so my latest one will be coming out in about actually a month today because I'm going to release it on my birthday on May 25th. So
Nice. Around the corner.
yes, right around the corner. So and it's a children's book and I'm thinking about your story because you talked about having alopecia at the age of 12
Hmm.
and right, that's such a critical developmental age where we're really trying to understand who we are and how we fit in the world. And what a beautiful story you could tell of the importance of being your authentic self at 12.
Yeah, I someone actually sent me a book, an author, she's
Really?
in Jersey. She sent me a book after I revealed my story, and she wrote a children's book. I think it was called like I Am Not My Hair, and it
Uh-huh.
tells her story of how her mom was with her step by step as she
Wow.
lost her hair, and I think her mom shaved her head off as well,
Mm,
to just have that sense of union with her
yes.
child, to let them
Yes.
know you're not alone.
That's
And
right.
you can see me cut my hair to show you that hair does not make you beautiful.
Yes. Yes.
So yeah,
Exactly.
I think children's books are definitely a part of the vision.
Yeah, I think, and I can see a little cartoon as
Hmm.
well. Definitely animation of a young Aziza and
Let
her
me turn my
children's
light on.
book.
It's starting to get
Okay, go ahead. Go
dark.
ahead. Yes, we have to make sure we see you. For those who are listening, if you have any questions or any other comments, please be sure to put them in the chat so I can share them as we're going. But yeah, there are so many possibilities. So even as we're sitting up here talking, and that sense of knowing that you have, you're gonna, do you already know you're gonna have more than one book?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I definitely want to write like a memoir.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, maybe more than one book, because a memoir is definitely one, and then maybe a children's book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I've met a few publishers,
Okay.
which is great. Also, just working for CBS, which is owned by Paramount, they have
Yeah.
their own publisher as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just about writing it. So I
Yeah.
don't know if I want to write it,
Yeah.
or if I want to find a writer to write it for me.
Okay.
That would be a good option as well.
Yes. Yes.
Save some time, but then it's like that's an investment as well.
It is. It definitely is. So I was my first book, The Greatest Soul Journey. I was actually on a retreat in Brazil because I needed to get away. And I woke up I had no intention to write a book. I woke up one morning and the message was very clear, it said time to write. And I went out on the balcony and I wrote several books that day.
Oh wow.
And out of that, I pulled The Greatest Soul Journey. So that was the first book.
Hmm.
And then even with the children's books, The Adventures of Froggy T and Bunny, a hip hop tale, because they're lyrical in nature, so you have to find the rhyming pattern in them. They literally come as downloads, and then I just write it. So it's also that creating space, as you're talking
Hmm.
about, and then let the stories tell itself. And then my second book, Live by the Spirit, what I decided to do was just take short insights that I had just to get comfortable with the writing process, and said, I'm not going to do more than 20 stories, and that'll be volume one
Hmm.
and then volume two. So just to make it real and also to make it manageable,
Right.
right? So it doesn't feel like a long, arduous process. So
Yeah.
we're open to hear your short stories if you just want to make something compact so we can put it in our purses and carry and read and get to know you better.
That's a good idea. And I love what you said about taking that trip to Brazil, to
Yeah.
being in the space, because that's important for me. And I realized that about myself, is I need to be in the right space that
Hmm.
brings me peace and zen, for me
Yes.
to be able to function one and just tap into my creativity.
Yeah.
That's just like who I am. Like some people, they can do things all day, every day, anywhere, anytime. No, I'm not
Hmm.
that way.
Hmm.
So
So I'm glad that you said, and I laughed because when you talked about going to Arizona and you looked at, I mean, that's how I ended up in Brazil. I was like, I need to go somewhere, and I want to go somewhere where I can't speak the language,
mhm.
because as long as I can communicate with you, somebody gonna talk to me, and I'm gonna talk back. So I need there to be somewhat of a challenge. And I started
Right.
practicing Portuguese, and it still didn't matter. We didn't speak the same language, but there's nonverbal spirit, no spirit. So we still ended up having conversations, but nonetheless. All right. So what do you do to recharge yourself and step away and give yourself that zen?
Hmm. I do like to just step back and give myself space and grace.
Mm-hmm.
I like to retreat into my home,
Yes.
retreat home, and just take my mind off things.
Yes.
I'm a very, like, although for my job I have to be outgoing and outspoken and very
Mm-hmm.
communicative and at a high level. In
Mm-hmm.
my personal life, I do like to be almost a recluse.
Yes.
So I enjoy my time to myself. I enjoy working out. I like Pilates recently.
Mm-hmm.
When I lived on the West Coast, I love hiking. I love being
Okay.
outdoors with nature. I love being by the
Mm-hmm.
water.
Yes.
Those things are important to me.
Yeah.
So I think at first moving to Philadelphia was a challenge because I lived in California for so long, or being on the West Coast for so long. I had easy access to like going out into nature and
Yeah.
being inspired just by my environment.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
moving back to the East Coast, it was like an awakening. Like, okay, you really have to find it within. You have to
Yes.
find it in different ways. Like
Mm-hmm.
beauty may come, or inspiration may come in forms that I may not normally be used to.
Yes.
So that was something that I have to, and I'm still working on
Mm-hmm.
discovering, and not
Mm-hmm.
just feeling the need to like run off and be somewhere like on the beach somewhere
Yeah.
to find that. Otherwise, like, because something that my boyfriend told me the other day, he was like, you have to remember your environment. For me, he was like, your environment informs your sense of happiness and peace. And
Mm-hmm.
that's just how I am. And everyone isn't like that, but I know for sure that is how I am. So if my
Yeah.
environment around me is in disarray, or
Yep.
it's not somewhere where I'm comfortable, I won't feel at peace, and I won't
Yeah.
feel happy. And I feel like, okay, now it's time for me to go up and run somewhere.
Go somewhere.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna ask just a couple more questions, and we're gonna wrap it up. Because I can't believe our hour has passed us already. You mentioned with your parents and specifically your father, constantly tell you have a story. We did not go through this. Um, for the story basically not to be told. Like it's
Mhm.
almost like there was a soul pact between y'all. Like we're gonna go through this whole thing. Would you deem yourself the storyteller of the family?
Yes. Well, yes, because to some degree, because I'm fortunate enough to have the platform and the
Yeah.
resources.
Yeah.
Um, and because I'm in a place in my life where I don't have a lot of like external factors that come into place. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have children. I don't feel the need to be tied to any place or
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I am the storyteller just by default.
Yes.
But my father is a better storyteller than I am. Like he's like you. Like if there's someone who will talk to him, he will talk and he will tell
Mm-hmm.
his story and share his wisdom. So
Mm-hmm.
I think he's the real storyteller.
Uh-huh. But it's interesting. I had a chance to meet and speak with Sana Japarta. She is the kora player from the Gambia, and
Mhm.
so she comes from one of the five families. And if I get the story right, she comes from one of the five families who are known as like the five dynasty families of griots from the Gambia, and
Okay.
she's the first female kora player ever, because it's normally an instrument played only by men, by the griots. And so here is I'm laughing at my journey as I'm looking. I keep coming across women storytellers.
Mm,
And so even though you say, look, my father is a better storyteller than me, he's passed it to you
yeah.
to be that storyteller.
And what's interesting, I think about that often, even like with the analogy you just brought up. For me, I am to some degree one of probably the first woman in my family to be independent. Like
Mm.
my mother has never worked. She's like dependent on my father.
Mhm.
And my
Mhm.
grandmother was the same way. She depended on her husband, and she
Mhm.
never really pursued the things that she wanted to. And then, of course, before that was slavery.
That's right.
So for me, I'm the first woman from my lineage to be
Yeah.
independent and be successful and be able to do these type of things.
Yeah.
So, like I said, again, by default, I am the storyteller.
You are.
And I have
Yeah.
five older brothers and one younger sister. So
Mhm.
as a woman, and also just as an example, because I do take that serious. Like,
Yeah.
as an example for my younger sister and my nieces who look up to me, I do have to be that representation and leave a
Yeah.
legacy for my entire family, which
Yeah.
is, it's a lot of pressure, but
Hmm.
it's something that
Hmm.
I embrace.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're the pattern breaker,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because as you mentioned, right, there are generational patterns that have taken place. Some people refer to them as generational curses, generational habits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Generational behaviors that have been watched and repeated without being questioned.
Mm-hmm.
Things that maybe at one point were functional or survival, but now are dysfunctional, that we have to be able to adjust and change as needed for the health of ourselves moving forward. So, congratulations for picking up the baton and
Thank
saying
you.
and saying I'm moving this bar all the way,
Yes.
as they say in the all the way up. I'm moving it all the way up,
Right.
right? So, Ruby, questions, comments before we get ready to close out.
I know you say that you may not have time, when time permits, but one of a suggestion is have a recorder, because
Hmm.
when you think of things later on, by the time you get ready to write it, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So have a recorder. When you think of it, just talking to it. You can put it on paper and change it around and put it where it belongs at any time. But
I
that's
love
just a
that.
suggestion. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
will. I definitely will.
yeah. So, words of inspiration, final thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
Words of inspiration. Hmm.
Your whole story is an inspiration.
It's the truth. It's the truth. Tell it, Ruby.
You
That's
Well,
the
can
my
do
truth.
words of inspiration
anything.
right now are on my phone, my lock screen,
Yes.
and it says, "Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take." And it's Proverbs
Hmm.
3:6. And that's important to me because it's just like, just trust God, and the path will lead you in the direction. And that's something that I pray almost every day, is like, Lord,
Hmm.
lead me in the way you would have me to go.
Hmm.
And that's just like understanding that everything might not go your way, it might not be easy, but in the
Hmm.
end it's going to be God's will, and that's
Yes.
good enough for me. I want what the Lord wants for me.
Come on. Come. Look, now we're gonna go. That's right.
Take it to church.
That's right. That's it. I always say I trust the process because I
Hmm.
trust the processor.
Yes.
Right? So we go with it. It may not feel good, but we know that it's for our good when we have devoted our life to live by God's will, because
Yes.
it's always the best for us. And I am an Ephesians 3, verse 20 person. God does it better than you could ever think, dare to dream, or imagine. And so I'm always like, that's my life. I want Ephesians 3, verse 20 in everything that I do. And having you tonight is one of those moments where I didn't know that it would come to pass, and here you are. So thank you so, so much for
Thank you for
joining us
having
tonight.
me. I
You are
enjoyed
welcome.
this.
Yeah.
Good, good. I am glad. And I know when we spoke, when I had a chance to hear you speak, excuse me, a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that you had said that this was something that you prayed for, and so
Hmm.
you're going to show up. Would you just tell the people a little bit about that, and then we'll wrap up?
Yes. So that's so interesting. I think, like, even before I shared my story, I've always wanted to be a motivational speaker or just have certain opportunities for myself. And I didn't realize how things would basically propel so fast once I told
Hmm.
my story, and once, I stepped into all of who I am. So many people became curious about me, attracted to my story, just want to know more about me. And
Hmm.
I have to remind myself to be grateful and to just be in the moment,
Yes.
because this is what I prayed for, and that I
Hmm.
wanted these things. So when they come, it's like, you got to be ready. It's like, you may not expect it all to happen at once,
Yes.
but I got to be ready and be grateful. And I was just speaking at an event for a broadcast association luncheon for scholarships,
Hmm.
and I have to remind myself every time, like, everyone doesn't know your story. So
Hmm.
sometimes when I get invited to speak, I get so overwhelmed, thinking like, okay, I have to prepare myself. I have to tell them something new. I have to make this interesting, because to me, it's obviously my story. So it seems old. I'm like, okay, everybody knows this is nothing interesting.
Right, right.
But I got to remember that everyone doesn't know my story.
That's
And
right.
even if they do, some people are still curious about certain things.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's good to just be in the moment and allow things to come and
Yeah.
embrace it. And, you know, I guess continue to spread the story and tell my journey.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much. JJ Hannah said, and I know she's coming from Houston, Texas. She says, I love the faith that's been at the front of her life. So may God continue to guide you and bless you. May you continue to listen and be obedient and allow Him to guide your feet in every step and guide your hand in every word that you write and speak, and continue to be an inspiration for us all. Thank you so much for
Thank
joining us.
you.
It
Same
Thank
was,
to you.
you.
thank you. Thank you.
And nice meeting you, Ruby.
You too. Great
All right.
story. I love
And
it.
would you please say hello to my husband, Edmund, even though he was unable to
Yes.
join us? So,
Hi, Edmund. I wish you were here to join us. I'm sure you would have contributed to the conversation in a meaningful way. So
yeah,
I wish you were here.
yeah. So maybe one day we'll get a chance to have you back, and this way you'll be able to
Definitely.
meet him. Yes. And I will also just want to make a quick announcement to people. Another powerful and dynamic young woman, her name is Dr. Imani. She is having an event this weekend, All Things Cancer and Wellness, here in Philadelphia, April 27th at 10 a.m. She's going to be doing free breast cancer, free breast screenings, mammogram. There's this fabulous device, I forget what it's called, but it's about the size of a mouse, and it works extremely well with people of color whose breast tissue tends to be denser than many times what a regular mammogram can pick up. So doing this for free, so free breast BEXA, that's what it's called. Free BEXA breast and chest screenings. This is for men and women. You do not have to have insurance. Just come, show up. There's also free HIV, STI screenings are going to be done, free CPR and first aid workshop, free spa massage and sewing workshop. There's also post mastectomy and areola tattooing that will be happening, as well as some mocktails and some food and some giveaways and so much more. So that's from 10 to 5 in the Manioc section at 126 Leverington Avenue. I will be sure to post this flyer on my website, askdrwaz.com. You can also go to Bird, and that's BYRD, cancerfoundation.org. So she is a wonderful young woman. She's been on the show before. You can check the replay where she talks about more about the events, things that will be happening. But please, this is a free event. Please show up. We have so many wonderful people who are doing things for the community, that are doing God's work, and they want to share their resources. So as Aziza told us, you pray for things, God delivers, you got to show up.
Right.
So this is one
That's
event I
true.
hope you show up for. All right, Aziza, we'll see you on the news.
Yes.
And y'all continue to be well. As always, God bless everyone and continue to live your greatest life. We'll see you soon. Good night.
Good
Good
night.
night.